Steenhuisen.
House Chairperson, members of the NCOP, those watching at home, it's really great to be here today, to be making my maiden speech in the NCOP, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to start off by thanking the Honourable Member for proposing this debate. I think it's a timely debate, and I think it's one that is essential, particularly given how important the agricultural sector is to South Africa. And I will be confining myself today, Madam Chair, to the agriculture side of the debate. Unfortunately for the Honourable Member who preceded me, I don't deal with land reform. That's dealt with by the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development. I deal with agriculture and how we can grow the sector. So the agricultural sector contributes 3% to our country's gross domestic product, but it accounts at the same time for over 7% of formal employment in the country. But if one takes into consideration the entire value chain of agriculture in our country, it comes up to around 12% of GDP. It therefore underpins rural development, it underpins food security, and it underpins economic development. The Department of Agriculture, I believe, can turn agriculture in South Africa into the engine room of job creation. Unemployment is one of the largest problems facing our country and is a crisis. Far too many of our citizens do not have access to jobs, and this has led to a hardship and poverty that grinds away on a daily basis in far too many households around the country. I fundamentally believe that in the short term, there are only three key sectors that can stimulate employment and job creation immediately to start to absorb around the 42% of people who are unemployed, the majority of whom are young people. And that is through manufacturing, tourism, but most importantly, agriculture. And I think that with the right interventions, which I want to talk about today, I think we can turn agriculture into that engine room that we so desperately need. The Department of Agriculture has recently conducted our first strategic planning session that will feed into the annual performance plan against which this House and the other House will measure our performance over the coming years. There are 7 key areas that we've identified that are essential to ensure that agriculture can take its rightful place as the premier job creation nexus in South Africa. So the first one of these priorities is building partnerships within the agricultural sector. The Department of Agriculture tends to position itself as the hub of partnership creation across the agricultural sector. It is only through effective partnerships that the department will be able to marshal the expertise, the resources, and the skills that are obtained in the agriculture sector towards achieving the common objectives set out in the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan, which remains the master plan that drives our inclusive agenda towards ensuring many more South Africans, particularly smaller scale farmers and farmers who we would like to move from a subsistence into a commercial basis, will be able to have a share of the market access, both locally but also internationally. Partnerships are the foundation upon which sustainable growth is built. In order to foster these partnerships, the department needs to be responsive to the needs and objectives of the players in the agricultural sector, from small-scale subsistence farmers all the way up to your mega farmers. This also needs to make sure that the objectives of the value chains, as well as the round tables, and the efforts thereof will depend on our ability to build the desperately needed public-private partnerships that will focus on growing the agricultural sector, supporting food producers, ensuring food security, job creation, and economic growth. This is going to be done through close collaboration with industry bodies, with commodity bodies, to share the experience and knowledge and ensure an open communication channel that will allow the department to be far more responsive and aligned and attuned to what assistance and support they require to improve and grow the sector. Collaboration with the representatives of all agricultural bodies to foster a two-way communication channel that will allow the department to be appraised of the issues, concerns, as well as the ideas of their members. Improved communication, including social media, traditional media, and from the department on interventions and initiatives. A user-friendly and interactive website for the department that will provide a good online interface to share information, data, and knowledge regarding the sector, and an improved turnaround time for requests for assistance, intervention, or information. The second key focus area is a modern and progressive legislative and regulatory environment. Agriculture as a sector is characterized by rapidly advancing technical, scientific, and economic changes and innovations. For the South African agricultural sector to remain on the cutting edge of these changes, it requires a legislative and regulatory environment that is modern, progressive, and nimble enough to adapt to changing circumstances and innovations. The current legislative and regulatory environment has largely not kept pace with changes and innovations in the global agricultural sector. Many pieces of legislation are outdated and out of step and have become a hindrance to the absorption of new technologies, remedies, practices, and innovations. Many of these are essential if we're going to improve yield, health, and profitability in the agricultural sector. And so this is going to be done by the department through a full review of all legislation that is impeding the growth of the agricultural sector, with a view to, with the help of the National Assembly and this House, repealing, amending, and replacing the legislation with new legislation that is more modern and fit for purpose. A review of all regulations, with an intention to remove all regulations that do not serve their purpose and that add friction costs to the successful agricultural production and or unnecessary add to the cost of food for our consumers. Thirdly, relying on evidence-based decision-making that is science-led where applicable and is data-driven. Maintaining an open policy and open door policy with the sector, from small-scale farmers, subsistence farmers, all the way up to the mega farmers, to assist them in identifying red tape and poor legislation with a view to then fixing this. Finally, making sure that legislative and regulatory amendments or introductions are fully canvassed within the agricultural sector to identify unintended consequences prior to introduction. Turning to the third priority area, market access for South African agriculture. Market access is fundamentally important for the profitability, viability, and sustainability of the agri sector. Without market access, growth and employment expansion is simply not going to be achievable. It's therefore essential that the Department of Agriculture plays a key role in expanding existing markets and opening new markets for South African agricultural products. Expansion of markets will stimulate the demand for South African products, and this demand will in turn drive economic growth and job creation across the sector. This is going to be done by reviewing existing trade agreements with other markets like AGOA, like the SAEU, and the IBSA agreements, to make sure that we're fully utilizing the provisions that are made in these agreements and to maximize the quantity and type of products that we're able to export within these existing agreements. Through the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan and value chain roundtables, work together with commodity organizations to identify potential new markets for South African agricultural products and aggressively go out and seek them. Working with value chains and roundtables to facilitate greater participation and involvement by historically disadvantaged and small-scale farmers in the value chains through greater market access. Work to improve the biosecurity and expand access for South Africa's agricultural products. And streamlining and fast-tracking the preparation and response times for protocols and questionnaires with regards to us being able to export into other countries. Fourthly, providing effective support for farmers to ensure inclusive, viable, sustainable, and profitable farming operations. As I've said already, South Africa's agricultural landscape is characterized by a diverse range of farmers. The range includes subsistence farmers, smallholder farmers, family farmers, and mega farmers. Each of these sectors within the agricultural family are characterized by different needs, different requirements, and different expectations of the department. The department needs, through interaction with each one of these particular members of the agricultural family, to identify and understand the constraints that they are facing and what they need from the department to be able to be successful. This is going to be done by working with the Land Bank and other strategic local and international partners to broaden massively the pool of available capital to expand and enhance the blended finance model. This will lead to greater access by farmers to a much larger pool of patient capital that is adaptive to the requirements of the sector. Secondly, ensuring that more farmers currently farming on leased land are given title to the land that they are on in order for this to be used as a financial instrument to leverage further capital. The initiatives announced by the previous speaker around taking all land and giving it to the state have been tried before. And wherever these policies have been tried before, they've collapsed agriculture, they've led to greater hunger, greater unemployment, and greater misery. We need to give people title to the land that they are on. We also need to ensure that initiatives are developed to enhance the participation of women, youth, and vulnerable groups in the agricultural sector. This is important. Next year is the International Year of the Woman Farmer, and we've already seen the huge impact that women can have in the agricultural space, particularly in the continent of Africa. And we need to be doing more to encouraging more women into the sector. Developing, creating an innovative way to use the land owned by the department in the agricultural land holding account to benefit more farmers who wish to enter the agricultural space or wish to expand on their current operations. Partnering with the private sector, industry bodies and commodity organizations and international agencies to expand and improve the extension services offered by the department. Establishing, through a public-private partnership with the Land Bank, as well as private insurance companies, access to, particularly for smaller farmers and subsistence farmers and the smaller scale farmers, access to affordable insurance. We've seen in the last year a spate of natural disasters that have occurred around the country. Many of the farmers cannot wait for a year for a disaster to be declared. They need to access money immediately to get through the immediate crisis. I believe that an innovative state-backed insurance scheme is the way to go, much along the lines of SASRIA, and I think this would immediately release funds for these farmers to be able to get the assistance they need to get back on their feet as quickly as possible. The fifth priority area is biosecurity, and biosecurity has to become everybody's responsibility. Many of our international markets and markets on the continent are constrained through a lax biosecurity regime in South Africa. By focusing on improving biosecurity and making biosecurity everybody's responsibility, not just the farmers, I think we'll be able to shift that and make South Africa's products more sought after around the world, open more markets for them, and ensure that many, many more players enter the value chain and contribute to the export. The sixth is advocacy for a growing sector. There are many issues that affect the agricultural sector which don't fall in the department. Things like rural safety, the state of water from municipalities, the contamination of irrigation schemes through flowing sewage, the ability to get goods to market through ports. And the department has to work closely with other departments in a joined-up way across government so that we can, as a sector, overcome these constraints. Finally, improving food security. South Africa, as the honourable member who introduced this debate, is correct in saying that South Africa faces a major problem with food insecurity. This is underlined by the release last month of the National Food and Nutrition Security Survey, which was released by my department. Food security is not only access to food, but also the quality of food and the consistency of food supply. South Africa also faces a cost of living crisis that is exacerbated by rising food prices. We will use this National Nutrition Survey now what has been able to do is pinpoint food nutrition crisis hotspots around the country, drill down to a district level, and by focusing far more attention on those areas, it allows us to deal with food insecurity in a much more coordinated and data-driven way than ever before. Chairperson, Wandile Sihlobo in his book, A Country of Two Agricultures, talks about the two agricultures in our country. It is essential that we use the next 5 years constructively working together to bridge those two agricultures and make sure that we make agriculture an inclusive, viable, sustainable, and profitable space for all of our citizens who wish to participate in it. Thank you very much.